Breaking Bad is a series that has been widely regarded as perfect, or as near perfect a television series can get, from its dynamic storytelling, to its use of diverse characterization, to its masterful acting. It has been one of the most well-regarded series of the past decade. However, no series is without flaw, and just like any other, Breaking Bad has its own. Now, this flaw isn't related to whatever degree the plot or character development for one character or another could have been better. It's actually related to something a little more abstract, which is its treatment of minority characters, because nearly all of the casualties of Walter White's and the cartel's illicit activities were of Latino characters. Now, this was a trend that I noticed as early as season 2, but confirmed for myself in season 3 of Breaking Bad. Nearly every character death that occurred from a deal gone bad, a turf war, or any other activity within the plot happened to a Latino character. This also means that every new character introduced throughout the series who was also Latino also was highly likely to die. It became a trope. Of course, Hector died, Tuco died, the cousins died, but it wasn't merely the fact that these characters died that made this a trope. It was the fact that most, if not all, of the peripheral characters that were Latino also died, particularly if they were named. Crazy 8, Emilio, but also Andrea Cantillo, a non-drug dealer character. Furthermore, the only Latino member of Pickman's posse died, Christian. Now, what exactly is the harm in this depiction? They were drug dealers. It is possible that because Walter White was the main protagonist, that the writers wanted to make a distinction between his family, his white family, and his suburban life that he enjoyed, and the cartel, and the miscreants that inhabited that world, which were primarily minorities and Latinos specifically. However, what's interesting about this trope is that a lot of the side characters that were involved in the drug world that weren't Latino but Caucasian actually survived or were generally untouched, like Wendy the prostitute and the rest of Pickman's crew, and Ed the vacuum salesman. It is possible from a media and race theory approach that one could surmise that this could suggest that Latinos are dispensable, but this narrative isn't part of a larger trope about Latinos being dispensable in the media. However, it is still a trope, and it was rather distracting, which is why this is a flaw. I could admit that yes, the writers were most likely trying to create some kind of contrast between Walter's home life of white middle-class mediocrity and his secret life of both physically foreign people, meaning minorities, and death. However, what Breaking Bad didn't do well enough for me was create parody. For all of the villains in death on the side of his drug life, the vast majority of them seen on screen were of Latino people. And while white people were still a part of that drug narrative, for some reason they were kept safe, in a matter of speaking. As a creative choice, it was fine, but in execution, it took me as a viewer out of the narrative. It made it so that while I watched season 3 and subsequent seasons, I could predict with nearly perfect accuracy the deaths of nearly every Latino character on screen, and most of them did die. In fact, I predicted the death of Steve Gomez seasons before it actually happened, when there was no real reason why he needed to die. It wasn't until the last season when they added more influence from the Nazis and those gangs that they broke the trope. And yes, there were plenty of white deaths as a result. I suspect this breaking of convention points to the idea that as more white people got involved in the gangs and death and drugs, that even white society isn't immune to this kind of darkness. However, in execution, that particular aspect of the show was a flaw. No viewer should be able to predict character deaths that easily for so long. Creative choices should not be so obvious. For at least 2 seasons of the show, I suspected the deaths of many of both the new and old Latino characters, and this is why this is a flaw. I'd guess unintentional, but a flaw nonetheless in an otherwise breathtaking show.